The morning sun rose soft and golden over Elysium 7. It was a beautiful world, green and peaceful, filled with farms and small towns and the sound of children laughing. 40,000 humans called this place home. They had built schools and parks and hospitals. They had planted trees and raised families. They believed they were safe. Dr. Catherine Moore stood outside the central school complex, watching the children run through the gates. She smiled as she counted them. Over 12,000 students attended classes here, making it the largest school in all the outer colonies. Parents waved goodbye. Teachers called out greetings. It was a normal day, like any other. Far away, in the cold darkness of space, Admiral Daniel Carter sat in his office at Earth's Orbital Defense Command. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. On his desk sat a photograph of his two daughters, Emma and Lucy. They lived on Elysium 7 with their mother. He missed them every day. His communicator beeped. A message from the Velthari Dominion had arrived. The Velthari were an ancient species. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were tall and thin, with pale skin and eyes like black glass. They believed themselves superior to all other races, especially humans. To them, humanity was young and weak, barely worth noticing. The message was simple. The Velthari demanded that humanity surrender 3 colony worlds, including Elysium 7. They called it a territorial correction. They gave humanity 1 week to comply. Earth government refused. They sent a polite but firm response. Humanity would not give up its worlds. Humanity would not bow to threats. The Velthari High Commander, Overlord Kethvon, read the human response and laughed. He was old even by Velthari standards, and he had crushed dozens of species who dared to refuse his commands. He decided that humans needed a lesson. Not a military defeat, but something more personal. Something that would break their spirit forever. He gave the order. Catherine Moore was eating lunch in her office when the first explosion hit. The ground shook so hard that she fell from her chair. Through her window, she saw fire falling from the sky. Bright streaks of light slammed into the school buildings, one after another. The sound was like thunder that never stopped. She ran outside. The world had become hell. Buildings collapsed around her. Smoke filled the air so thick she could barely breathe. She heard screaming everywhere, high and sharp and filled with terror. Children's voices calling for help. Catherine tried to reach the nearest school building, but it was already gone. Where classrooms had stood moments before, there was now only rubble and flame. She dug through the debris with her bare hands, pulling at broken concrete and twisted metal. Her fingers bled. Her lungs burned. She found small bodies buried in the wreckage, and she screamed until her voice gave out. The attack lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes to destroy everything. When the Velthari ships finally departed, they left behind silence. The school complex that had held 12,000 children was now a smoking crater. The surrounding neighborhoods lay in ruins. Emergency crews rushed in from the surviving parts of the colony, but there was little they could do. The dead far outnumbered the living. Catherine sat in the ash and stared at nothing. Around her, parents arrived searching for their children. Their cries filled the air, desperate and broken. She watched a father fall to his knees when he found his daughter's backpack, bright pink and covered in stars, lying empty in the dirt. Across the galaxy, the Velthari broadcast their attack on every channel. They showed the destruction proudly as a warning to all species. This is what happens, they declared, when you refuse the Dominion. This is what happens when you forget your place. Admiral Daniel Carter was in a meeting when the footage reached Earth. He watched the screen in silence as the school buildings exploded. He watched the camera pan across the wreckage, showing small bodies covered in dust. He watched and said nothing. Then his communicator rang. It was a call from Elysium 7. The voice on the other end spoke quickly, delivering news that no parent should ever hear. His daughters Emma and Lucy had been in class when the bombs fell. They did not survive. Carter ended the call. He stood up slowly, his face completely blank. His officers watched him, waiting for orders, waiting for rage, waiting for something. But Carter simply walked out of the room without a word. He disappeared for 6 hours. No one could find him. No one knew where he went. When he returned, something had changed. His eyes were dry. His hands were steady. His voice was calm and cold, like ice over deep water. He called his senior staff together and began issuing orders with mechanical precision. Ambassador Lena Grant received word of the attack while meeting with the G5 and began issuing orders with mechanical precision. Ambassador Lena Grant received word of the attack while meeting with the G5 of Versus Makaler and began issuing orders with mechanical precision. Ambassador Lena Grant's Rizmana Urdas received word of the attack while meeting with the Galactic Concord, an alliance of alien species that supposedly kept peace among the stars. The alien ambassadors offered their condolences. They expressed their sympathy. Then they advised humanity to accept the Velthari demands to prevent further violence. "You are a young species," one ambassador said gently. "You cannot hope to fight the Dominion. It is better to bend than to break." Grant stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked out without responding. Back on Elysium 7, Catherine Moore found a working communication device in the rubble. With shaking hands, she recorded everything. The destroyed buildings, the bodies, the toys and books and little shoes scattered in the ash. She sent the footage directly to Earth Command, unedited and raw. 3 days later, Earth's United Council held an emergency session. Every leader, every general, every official gathered in one room. Admiral Carter stood before them, his uniform perfect, his posture straight. His face showed nothing at all. The council chairman asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Admiral Carter, what response do you recommend?" Carter looked at the assembled leaders. He thought of his daughters. He thought of 12,000 children who would never grow up, never fall in love, never have children of their own. He thought of the Velthari laughing as they broadcast their massacre. "They wanted to see what humans are made of," he said quietly. "They believe we are weak. They believe we will surrender. They believe they can hurt our children and face no consequences." He paused. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made strong men shiver. "I intend to show them how wrong they are." The council voted unanimously. Total war against the Velthari Dominion. No negotiations. No mercy. No end until justice was served. Across the galaxy, the Velthari celebrated their easy victory over the weak humans. They had no idea what was coming. They had poked what they thought was a sleeping lamb. They had woken a lion. 3 months passed after the attack on Elysium 7. In that time, humanity went quiet. Ambassadors were recalled from every alien world. Communication channels closed one by one. Trade ships stopped traveling to foreign ports. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared behind an invisible wall. The Galactic Concord noticed this silence and grew uneasy. They sent messages asking for updates. They received no response. They sent diplomats to human space. The diplomats were turned away at the border, politely but firmly. On the Velthari homeworld, Overlord Kethvon found humanity's silence amusing. He stood before a crowd of thousands and gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. "The humans have crawled into their hole to weep," he announced with a thin smile. "They send no ships. They speak no words. They are a species of cowards, broken by a single strike. Let all the galaxies see what happens to those who challenge the Dominion." The crowd cheered. Other species watched the broadcast and shook their heads. Perhaps the Velthari were right. Perhaps humans really were too weak to fight back. But behind humanity's wall of silence, something very different was happening. Every shipyard on every human world worked day and night. Workers slept in shifts of 4 hours, then returned to their stations. Factories that once made farming equipment now produced weapons. Scientists who once studied medicine now designed missiles. The entire human economy shifted toward a single purpose. Admiral Daniel Carter oversaw everything from his command station. He had not taken a day off since the attack. He barely slept. He ate only when his officers forced food into his hands. His eyes had developed dark circles beneath them, but his mind remained sharp as a blade. In a secret facility on Mars, Dr. Aaron Webb led a team of weapons researchers. They worked on technologies that humanity had developed years ago, but locked away because they were too terrible for civilized warfare. Now those locks were being removed. These weapons will cause massive destruction. One scientist warned Dr. Webb. Are we sure we want to use them? Webb looked at the man calmly. They killed our children, he said. They killed them to teach us a lesson. Now we will teach them something in return. Lieutenant Megan Cross worked in naval intelligence, spending her days and nights decoding Veltri communications. She was young and brilliant, with a gift for finding patterns others missed. After weeks of work, she discovered something that made her run to Admiral Carter's office. "Sir," she said breathlessly, "the Veltri have almost no defenses on their core worlds. They have not faced a real threat in thousands of years. They rely completely on fear to keep enemies away." Carter nodded slowly. "They believe their reputation protects them. They think no one would dare attack them." "Yes, sir." "Their military is spread thin across conquered territories. Their homeworld has only ceremonial guards." For the first time in months, something like a smile crossed Carter's face. It was not a pleasant smile. Colonel Nathan Price commanded a special unit called Black Harvest. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best warriors humanity had, trained for impossible missions. But Price had added a new requirement for this particular operation. He recruited only soldiers who had lost children on Elysium 7. "I do not want men seeking glory," Price explained to his officers. "I want parents seeking justice. There's a difference. Glory hunters take risks. Parents finish the job and go home." The soldiers who joined Black Harvest trained harder than any soldiers in history. They learned Veltri language and culture. They studied Veltri military bases. They practiced their skills until they could fight in their sleep. One of them was Sergeant Brittany Cole. She had been a schoolteacher before the attack. Her son Marcus had been 7 years old. He loved dinosaurs and chocolate ice cream and sleeping in his mother's bed during thunderstorms. He died in the first wave of bombs. Brittany had joined the military the day after she buried him. She was not the strongest soldier or the fastest, but her eyes held something that made even veteran warriors step back. It was a cold fire that never went out. In Earth's largest shipyard, a new vessel took shape. It was enormous, larger than any warship ever built. Workers called it the Requiem. Admiral Carter had designed it himself for one specific purpose. "She is not meant to conquer," Carter told Commander Ryan Torres as they watched the construction. "She is meant to deliver a message the Veltri will never forget." Torres nodded. He was young for his rank, known for his careful thinking and calm nature. But even he felt the dark energy that filled human space these days. It was not hatred, exactly. It was something deeper and colder. "Sir," Torres said quietly, "what happens after we win? What kind of people will we become?" Carter was silent for a long moment. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I know what kind of people we will become if we do nothing. We will become the species that let their children die unavenged. I cannot accept that." Ambassador Lena Grant had been recalled from diplomatic service after the attack. She had spent 3 months in silence, refusing to speak to anyone. Then Carter called her with a new assignment. "The Galactic Concord meets next week," he said. "I want you to deliver humanity's formal response." Grant accepted without hesitation. She spent days preparing. She gathered footage from Elysium 7 that had never been shown publicly. She wrote and rewrote her speech until every word cut like a knife. When the day came, she stood before the assembled alien ambassadors in their great council chamber. Hundreds of species watched her, some with curiosity, some with pity, some with contempt. "You told us to accept the Velthary demands," Grant began, her voice steady. "You told us we were too young and weak to fight. You offered your condolences for our dead children, as if they were pets who had wandered into traffic." She pressed a button. The chamber's screens lit up with footage from Elysium 7. The alien ambassadors saw the burning schools, the tiny bodies, the parents screaming for their children. They saw the blood and the ash, and the toys melting in the flames. Many looked away. Some covered their eyes. One ambassador vomited onto the floor. Grant let the footage play for 5 full minutes. Then she stopped it and faced the council again. "You told us to know our place," she said coldly. "We have found it. Our place is standing over the graves of those who wronged us." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the alien ambassadors sat in stunned silence. 2 weeks later, humanity's fleet launched. Over 2,000 warships, more than anyone believed humans possessed, moved toward Velthary space in perfect formation. At their center flew the Requiem, black as night and bristling with weapons. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide past. In his pocket, he carried the photograph of his daughters. He touched it once, then turned to his officers. "Begin the operation," he said calmly. "Show them the other side of mankind." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed and vanished. The galaxy held its breath. The Velthary border station Korath 4 was supposed to be unbreakable. It held 5,000 soldiers and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Its commanders believed nothing in the galaxy could threaten them. Then the sky filled with human ships. The station sensors counted them with growing disbelief. 100 ships. 500. 1,000. The numbers kept climbing until the sensors simply stopped trying. Over 2,400 human warships hung in space like a wall of steel and anger. The station commander sent an urgent message to the Velthary homeworld. Before he could receive a response, the humans attacked. Admiral Daniel Carter gave his orders from the bridge of the Requiem. His voice was calm and cold, each word precise. Target their weapon systems first, then their engines, then their communications. Leave their life support intact. His officers looked at him with surprise. "Sir, you want to leave survivors?" "I want witnesses," Carter replied. "I want them to tell their people what they saw today." The battle lasted 11 minutes. The Velthary defenses, so feared across the galaxy, crumbled like paper against human weapons. Dr. Webb's terrible new technologies tore through Velthary shields as if they did not exist. Human pilots flew with a desperate precision that bordered on madness. When it ended, Korath 4 was a broken shell. Every weapon destroyed. Every ship disabled. But the station itself remained intact. Its crew alive to watch the human fleet pass by without a second glance. Captain Kyle Bennett commanded the assault carrier, Atonement. His ship led the second wave, clearing a path through Velthary defensive lines. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled, but his crew followed him without question. "Captain," his sensor officer reported, "we are detecting distress signals from a nearby planet." "Non-Velthary signals." Bennett frowned. "Put it on screen." The image showed a world covered in gray factories and mining pits. Thousands of aliens, clearly not Velthary, worked in chains under the eyes of armed guards. They were thin and weak, their bodies showing signs of years of abuse. "Slaves," Bennett whispered. "The Valkyrie keeps slaves." He contacted Admiral Carter immediately. Carter's response came without hesitation. "Liberate them. All of them." Bennett's forces descended on the slave world like avenging angels. The Valkyrie guards, unprepared for any resistance, surrendered within hours. When the chains came off, the freed slaves fell to their knees and wept. One of them, a female of a species Bennett did not recognize, approached him with trembling steps. "Why?" she asked in broken common tongue. "Why did you free us? What do you want?" Bennett looked at her for a long moment. "Nothing," he said. "We want nothing from you. We are just doing what should have been done long ago." The freed slaves had information. Lots of information. They revealed that the Valkyrie had kept dozens of species in bondage for centuries. They showed hidden military bases and secret weapon stores. They gave coordinates and passwords and schedules. Within days, the human fleet had more intelligence than their spies had gathered in years. The Valkyrie's greatest secrets spilled out from the mouths of those they had abused. Colonel Nathan Price led Black Harvest on surgical strikes against Valkyrie command centers. His teams moved like shadows, appearing without warning and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Each attack ended with the same message broadcast on all channels: "For the children of Elysium." Sergeant Brittany Cole was part of the team that captured a major Valkyrie communication hub. The guards there fought hard, but they were no match for soldiers who had nothing left to lose. After the battle, Cole found a room filled with propaganda posters. One showed a Valkyrie soldier standing over a human child with the caption, "Teach the animals their place." She stared at the poster for a long time. Then she tore it down, folded it carefully, and put it in her pocket. When her team leader asked why, she simply said, "Evidence." The Galactic Concord finally broke its silence. They sent a formal demand that humanity cease hostilities immediately. They threatened sanctions and isolation if the attack continued. Admiral Carter received the message on the bridge of the Requiem. His officers watched nervously as he read it. "Send the reply," Carter said calmly. "What should we say, sir?" "One word: no." The Concord received humanity's response and did nothing. What could they do? Their peacekeeping forces were smaller than the human fleet. They had spent centuries trusting the Valkyrie to maintain order. Now, they realized their mistake. Commander Ryan Torres led a destroyer group against a Valkyrie military shipyard. The battle was fierce, the Valkyrie fighting desperately to protect their ability to build new ships. Torres lost 3 vessels before his forces broke through Dot as the shipyard burned. Torres received a communication from a Valkyrie commander. The alien appeared on screen, his pale face twisted with rage. "You are barbarians," the Valkyrie spat. "You attack without warning. You show no mercy. You are worse than animals." Torres looked at him with eyes like stone. "You bombed a school full of children," he said quietly. "You killed 12,000 innocents to teach us a lesson. You broadcast their deaths across the galaxy as entertainment." He leaned forward. "We learned your lesson well. Now we are teaching you ours." On the Valkyrie homeworld, Overlord Kethvon received report after report of defeats. A dozen worlds had fallen. Supply lines were cut. Military bases were destroyed. The fleet he had sent to stop the humans had been scattered like leaves in a storm. An advisor approached him nervously. "Overlord, perhaps we should consider negotiation." "The humans might accept silence," Kethvon snapped. "They are merely animals lashing out in grief. They will tire soon. They cannot maintain this pace forever." The advisor bowed and retreated. But as he left, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The report showed that human ships had not stopped for rest. They had not paused for repairs. They had not slowed down for any reason. For 3 months, the human fleet had advanced without pause. Their soldiers fought without sleep. Their ships flew without rest. They moved like machines, relentless and unstoppable. The advisor realized what the overlord refused to see. The humans were not animals lashing out blindly. They were parents who had watched their children die. They would not stop until justice was served. And justice, for humans, meant something very specific. In the liberated slave worlds, former prisoners joined the human cause by the thousands. Species that had suffered under Velthari rule for generations now saw their chance for freedom. They provided ships and soldiers and supplies. What began as humanity's war of vengeance became something larger. It became a revolution against an empire built on cruelty and fear. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Requiem as his fleet prepared for the next phase of the campaign. The Velthari inner systems lay ahead, protected by their final defensive lines. Dr. Catherine Moore, now serving as a cultural advisor to the fleet, joined him at the observation window. "They will fight harder as we get closer to their homeworld," she warned. "Desperate enemies are dangerous." Carter nodded. "I know, but we are not here to destroy them completely. We are here to break their ability to make war, to make sure they can never hurt anyone again." And then, Carter was silent for a moment. In his pocket, he touched a photograph of his daughters. "And then," he said quietly, "we go home and learn how to live with what we have done." The fleet jumped forward. The final battle was about to begin. 8 months had passed since the war began. 8 months of battles and blood and burning ships. The human fleet had pushed deep into Velthari territory, leaving shattered military bases and freed slave worlds in its wake. But war has a cost. Even at just war. Commander Ryan Torres stood alone on the observation deck of his destroyer, watching the stars. His ship had just finished another battle, another victory. The crew celebrated below, their cheers echoing through the metal corridors. But Torres did not feel like celebrating. He heard footsteps behind him. Admiral Carter appeared at his side, looking as tired as Torres felt. "You are troubled," Carter said. It was not a question. Torres nodded slowly. "Sir, I have been watching our soldiers. Some of them are starting to enjoy this. They laugh when Velthari ships explode. They celebrate when enemies die. That scares me." Carter was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "It scares me too, Commander. War changes people. It brings out parts of us that should stay hidden. How do we stay human? How do we win without becoming monsters?" Carter turned to face the younger officer. His eyes were tired but clear. "We follow the rules," he said firmly. "We destroy their military. We free their slaves. We capture their leaders for trial. But we do not bomb their cities. We do not kill their civilians. We do not make them watch their children die." He paused. "That is what makes us different. That is what we are fighting for." Torres wanted to believe him. But late at night, when the screams of battle still echoed in his ears, he wondered if the difference was smaller than they thought. On the Velthari homeworld, Councillor Velthari sat in her chambers and wept. She was old for her kind, with silver patterns on her pale skin that showed her high rank. She had served the Dominion for centuries, and she had opposed the attack on Elysium 7 from the beginning. "This is madness," she had told Overlord Kethvon before the bombing. "Attacking children will not teach humans obedience. It will wake something terrible." Kethvon had laughed at her. "You are soft, Counselor. The humans are weak creatures. A show of strength is all they understand." Now the Dominion was collapsing. Now human ships filled the sky. Now everything Velthari had feared was coming true. She made a decision. She contacted Ambassador Lena Grant through secret channels and requested a meeting. Grant agreed. They spoke through encrypted communications. Two women from enemy species trying to find a way out of the darkness. "What do you want?" Grant asked coldly. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. Vethrai bowed her head. I want to end this war. I want to find terms that both our peoples can accept. Terms? Grant's voice rose slightly. You slaughtered our children. You bombed schools and playgrounds. You killed 12,000 innocents and broadcast it as entertainment. What terms could possibly make that right? Nothing can make it right, Vethrai admitted. Nothing can bring those children back. But continuing this war will only create more dead children on both sides. Grant was silent. For a moment, Vethrai saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain, perhaps, or exhaustion. I will speak to Admiral Carter, Grant finally said. But I make no promises. Sergeant Brittany Cole and her unit captured a Velthari general named Zethvar. He was one of the officers who had planned the Elysium attack. His signature was on the orders that sent bombs falling on schools that the soldiers brought him before Cole in a small room. Zethvar stood tall, trying to look dignified even in chains. You are the female who leads this unit, he said, studying her with cold eyes. I expected someone larger. Cole said nothing. She looked at him for a long moment, remembering her son. Remembering the morning she had kissed Marcus. Goodbye without knowing it would be the last time her hands wanted to close around his throat. Her heart wanted to watch him suffer the way she had suffered. Every cell in her body screamed for vengeance. But she was human, and humans were supposed to be better. Take him to the detention center, she said quietly. He will face trial for his crimes, a proper trial with evidence and judges. Her soldiers looked surprised. Sergeant, are you sure? Cole nodded. He does not deserve mercy, but we deserve to give it anyway. That is what separates us from them. Zethvar stared at her with confusion. He had expected torture and death. He had prepared himself for it. This strange mercy made no sense to him. Why? He asked as the soldiers led him away. I killed your people. Why do you not kill me? Cole met his eyes. Because my son would have wanted me to be better than you. The Galactic Concord, silent for so long, finally took action. But not the action anyone expected. Ambassador Grant received a formal request from the Concord leadership. They wanted to meet with Admiral Carter. Not to demand peace, but to ask for help. Help? Carter raised an eyebrow when Grant showed him the message. They ignored our children's deaths. They told us to surrender, and now they want our help? Grant nodded grimly. They finally understand what the Velthari really are. The slave worlds, the mass graves, the centuries of cruelty. The Velthari were not keeping peace. They were keeping everyone afraid. And now they want us to save them from the monster they allowed to grow. Yes, Grant paused. I know it seems unfair. But if we help them now, we gain allies. If we refuse, we fight alone. Carter considered this for a long time. The father in him wanted to refuse. The admiral in him saw the wisdom in Grant's words. Tell them we accept, he said finally. But the Velthari leaders will face justice. That is not negotiable. Dr. Catherine Moore had spent months studying Velthari culture. She had learned their language, read their history, analyze their psychology. Now Admiral Carter asked her the most important question. What do they fear most? What will break them? Moore thought carefully before answering. Not death, she said. The Velthari are ancient. They do not fear dying. They fear irrelevance. They fear being forgotten. They fear becoming nothing. Carter nodded slowly. So we do not kill them all. We simply make them small. We take away their power, their influence, their place in the galaxy. That would hurt them more than any weapon. The human fleet reached the Velthari homeworld on a cold morning in the 8th month of the war. Thousands of ships surrounded the planet like a net of steel. Below them, billions of Velthari looked up at the sky and saw their doom. Admiral Carter broadcast a message to the planet. His voice was calm and steady, carried on every frequency. You wanted humanity to submit. You wanted us to bow before your power. Instead, you woke something you do not understand. We do not conquer. We do not enslave. We do not kill civilians to make a point. He paused. When he continued, his voice dropped lower. But we do not forget. And we do not forgive those who harm our children. Your military is destroyed. Your empire is broken. Your leaders will face judgment for their crimes. Not execution without trial. Not revenge. Justice. The message ended. The Valkyrie waited for the bombs to fall. They never came. Instead, human soldiers landed at military bases and government buildings. They arrested officials and seized records. They secured weapons and freed prisoners. They were efficient and professional and terrifying in their restraint. Overlord Kethvan was captured trying to flee his palace. He screamed and struggled as human soldiers bound his hands. "You cannot do this," he shouted. "I am the Overlord. I am the ruler of 1,000 worlds." Sergeant Cole was part of the team that took him. She looked at him without anger, without hatred, without anything at all. "You were the ruler of 1,000 worlds," she corrected. "Now you are a prisoner. And soon you will answer for what you did to our children." Kethvan stared at her in disbelief. In all his long life, no one had ever spoken to him that way. No one had ever dared. "You should kill me," he whispered. "That is what I would do. That is what any strong species would do." Cole shook her head. "That is why you lost. You never understood us at all." That night, Admiral Carter stood on the balcony of the Valkyrie Capitol building, looking out over the silent city. The war was over. The battle was won, but he did not feel victory. He felt only a terrible emptiness where his daughters used to live. Dr. Moore found him there as dawn approached. "It is done," she said softly. "The Valkyrie military is completely disarmed. Their leaders are in custody. The trials will begin soon." Carter nodded without looking at her. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "All of this death and destruction, did it bring them back?" Moore stood beside him in silence. There was no good answer to that question. There never would be. "No," she finally said. "But maybe it will protect the next generation. Maybe no one will ever again think it is safe to harm human children." Carter touched the photograph in his pocket. His daughters smiled up at him, frozen forever in a moment of joy. "Maybe," he whispered. "I hope so." 1 year had passed since the attack on Elysium 7. 1 year since the bombs fell on innocent children and the galaxy changed forever. Now the Valkyrie Dominion existed only in history books, and humanity stood at the center of a new order, the trial of Overlord. Kethvan took place in a great hall built specifically for the occasion. Representatives from 40 species filled the seats, watching as the former ruler of 1,000 worlds stood in chains before his judges. The prosecution presented evidence for weeks. Documents showing Kethvan ordered the Elysium attack. Recordings of him laughing as children died. Testimony from survivors who had lost everything. Admiral Daniel Carter watched from the gallery. He did not speak. He did not need to. The evidence spoke for itself. When the verdict came, no one was surprised. Guilty on all counts. Crimes against humanity. Crimes against peace. Mass murder of innocents. The sentence was not death. Humanity insisted on this, despite protests from species who wanted Kethvan executed immediately. "Death is too easy," Ambassador Alina Grant explained to the other representatives. "He will spend his remaining years in a small cell, watching the galaxy forget him." For a Valkyrie, that is worse than any execution. Kethvan screamed when he heard the sentence. He cursed and struggled as guards led him away. The ancient ruler, who once commanded the obedience of billions, would spend his final decades as a forgotten prisoner, irrelevant and alone. Council of Vethri became the new leader of the Valkyrie people. She worked tirelessly to rebuild her species' reputation, meeting with former victims and offering reparations wherever possible. Dr. Catherine Moore visited her during those early days. The two women sat in a simple room, far from the grand palaces where Velthri leaders once held court. "What do humans expect from us?" Velthri asked. Her voice was tired but sincere. "How can we possibly make up for what we did?" Moore thought carefully before answering. "Be better," she said simply. "That is all any of us can do. Acknowledge the past, learn from it, and build something new." Velthri nodded slowly. "Many of my people still hate humanity. They see you as destroyers, as enemies who humiliated us. And many humans still hate the Velthri. That will take generations to heal." Moore paused. "But it starts with moments like this. Two people from enemy species sitting together trying to understand." The Galactic Concord offered humanity a permanent seat on their council. It was the highest honor they could give, a recognition that humans had earned their place among the stars. Ambassador Grant accepted on behalf of her species. But she added conditions that made the assembled aliens uncomfortable. "No species will ever again target children as a weapon of intimidation," she declared. "Any government that harms innocents to send a message will face all of us united. This is not a request. This is the price of peace." The council accepted unanimously. They had seen what humanity could do when provoked. No one wanted to test those limits again. Colonel Nathan Price disbanded Black Harvest after the war ended. His soldiers, the parents who had fought so hard for justice, returned to their normal lives. A reporter asked him why he dissolved such an effective unit. "We were built for a specific purpose," Price explained. "That purpose is finished. Now we go back to being mothers and fathers. We hold our children close. We try to remember who we were before grief turned us into weapons. Do you regret anything?" Price was silent for a long moment. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that anyone had to die. But I do not regret protecting our children. I would do it again." Commander Ryan Torres returned to Earth and requested leave from active service. The fleet commander granted it without question. Torres traveled to Elysium 7, now slowly rebuilding from the ashes. The colony had been transformed into a memorial site, with gardens growing where schools once stood. He spent a day walking among the memorial stones. Each one bore a child's name, along with a small message from their family. The youngest victim had been 3 years old. The oldest was 17. Torres stopped at a section designated for planting. He dug a small hole in the soft earth and placed a seedling inside. It was a tree from Earth, chosen specifically because it grew slowly and lived for centuries. "One tree for every child," he whispered as he patted the soil around the roots. "So no one will ever forget." When he finally left Elysium 7, he looked back at the gardens one last time. Thousands of trees swayed in the breeze, small now, but destined to grow tall. They would stand for generations, living monuments to lives cut short. Sergeant Brittany Cole struggled more than most. The war had given her purpose, had channeled her grief into action. Now that it was over, she did not know who she was anymore. She visited her son's grave every week. Sometimes she talked to him about her day. Sometimes she simply sat in silence, feeling the weight of his absence. One afternoon, Dr. Moore found her there. "I do not know how to live now," Cole admitted. "The anger kept me going. Without it, I feel empty." Moore sat beside her on the grass. The anger was never meant to last forever. It was fuel for the fire. But fires burn out. What remains is what matters. What remains is just pain. For now. But pain fades, eventually. What never fades is love. You loved your son. You still love him. That love does not need anger to exist. Cole thought about this for a long time. She touched the small headstone with her fingertips, tracing the letters of her son's name. "Marcus would have wanted me to be happy again," she said softly. "Yes, he would have wanted you to live, to find joy, to honor his memory by being the mother he loved." Cole wiped her eyes. For the first time since the attack, she felt something other than cold rage. It was small and fragile, barely more than a spark, but it was hope. Admiral Daniel Carter served for 3 more years before retiring. He spent his final day in uniform visiting the Elysium 7 Memorial, standing before the stones that bore his daughters' names. He removed his admiral's insignia and placed it gently on Emma's marker. Then he knelt and touched both stones with his weathered hands. "It is over," he whispered. "I did everything I could. I hope it was enough. I hope you can forgive me for not being there when you needed me." The wind stirred the branches of the memorial trees. Carter imagined he could hear his daughter's laughter in the rustling leaves. "I miss you every day, every hour, every minute." His voice cracked. "But I will see you again someday. And when I do, I want to tell you that I made the galaxy safer for the children who came after. That your deaths meant something." He stood slowly, his old bones aching. The sun was setting over the memorial gardens, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. "Sleep well, my girls. Daddy loves you." He walked away without looking back. The stars were coming out, thousands of points of light in the darkening sky. Somewhere among them, the galaxy continued its endless turning. 10 years later, Elysium 7 was reborn. New towns rose from the ashes. New families made their homes in the green fields. New children played in the parks and gardens. The memorial remained at the heart of the rebuilt colony, carefully maintained and visited by thousands every year. The trees had grown tall now, their branches reaching toward the sky. An interspecies school opened near the memorial site. Human and Velthari children attended classes together, learning each other's languages and cultures. It was strange at first, awkward and tense. But children are adaptable. Within a year, friendships had formed across species lines. On a sunny afternoon, a human girl named Sophie played in the memorial gardens with a Velthari boy named Kel. They were both 7 years old. Too young to remember the war, too innocent to understand the weight of history around them. Sophie showed Kel how to climb trees. Kel taught Sophie a Velthari game involving small stones. They laughed together, their voices echoing across the gardens. A visitor stopped to watch them. He was an old man with silver hair and tired eyes, but something like peace had finally settled on his face. Daniel Carter smiled as the children played. Behind them, the memorial stones stood silent witness to the past. Before them, the future stretched out bright and full of possibility. A plaque near the garden entrance caught the light. Its words had been chosen carefully by the survivors, by the parents who had lost everything and slowly learned to live again. They tried to break us with grief. We answered with hope. The children's laughter rose into the sky, carried by the wind across the memorial gardens. It was a sound that had been silenced once, at terrible cost. It would never be silenced again. Humanity had shown the galaxy the depths of its wrath. Now it showed something greater. The capacity to heal, the strength to forgive, the courage to build a better tomorrow from the ashes of yesterday. The war was over. The healing had begun. And the children, human and Velthari alike, played together beneath the memorial trees. Their joy, a promise that the darkness would not last forever. This was humanity's true victory. Not the battles won or enemies conquered, but the future they created for their children.